I love Terry very, very much, and it's nice when you have a lot of family, which we certainly have had, but Terry was special.
She was just a loving daughter. I mean, everybody loved her. She was a joyful child.
Terry was a really sweet little girl, and really nice and quiet and easy to get along with.
My sister Terry was 4 years older than I was, and she used to take care of me when I was little. I really loved Terry, and she really loved me. To me, she was kind of the perfect older sister. On the day of our car accident, our family was driving to South Bend, Indiana, from our home in southeastern Washington to attend an annual Catholic Charismatic Renewal Conference there. The weekend beforehand, we were going to a retreat house in Spokane.
We didn't pray for the safe trip. Terry prayed for the safe trip. When we left the retreat house, everyone got up early and everyone was too tired to pray. And so I asked Terry if she would pray, and she started praying.
We had a trailer that was hooked up to the station wagon, and the trailer started whipping back and forth, and the car started swaying back and forth. And we went into the middle of the freeway where the grass was, and we rolled over 3 times.
It came right side up, and my first thought was the car is going to explode or catch on fire, and so we need to get everybody out of here. And so I said, let's get out and let's get away, let's get far away from the car. Of course, we checked everybody at that moment, so I said, how are you doing? Everybody is okay, we get on their feet, and we can get up, let's get back up here out of the way, and so on if we can. And we did that and got back away, and somebody said, well, where's Terry? I said, Terry, where is she? I looked around and she wasn't there. And so I went back towards the car and found her laying there.
Dad was trying to revive Terry, and he wasn't able to do it. And several other people tried to revive her, and there's just no hope. And then we waited for the ambulances. Finally, we gave up.
We had a charismatic priest come over to our motel. I asked him, how come we didn't have a safe trip if Terry prayed? He wanted to know if she specified where she was going. He said, because you did have a safe trip, all of you were fine, and Terry went straight to heaven.
Since I was so little, I was only 6 years old when Terry died, I didn't ask myself all those questions that an adult would ask. Things like, why do bad things happen to good people? And I think that some of those questions that my parents and my older siblings went through were just kind of sitting there deep within me, waiting for me until I was old enough to deal with them. And then I found that my own trust in God as an adult was really being challenged, especially with my own children when I became a parent and our family would travel and we would pray for a safe trip. I began to think about how Terry had prayed for a safe trip and she had died. And I realized that even though we were praying for a safe trip, that one of my kids or my husband or myself could die or a tragedy could happen to us, that really challenged my trust in God. In order to have a relationship with anybody, we need to be able to trust them. We have to be able to open our hearts, be vulnerable towards the other person. The first part of the spiritual life is a lot about our action in growing closer to God, but we get to a certain point where we have to be more passive and where our main job becomes surrender to letting God do His work in our hearts and our souls. And if we aren't able to trust Him, He can't do that deep work that needs to be done in order for us to become holy. I was reading a new book about St. Therese called The Way of Trust and Love. And I read in there that St. Therese said that when we sin, we should imagine ourselves as a child who has disobeyed his father. And that child goes to his father and throws his arms around his father's neck and says, "Father, I'm so sorry that I offended you. I promise to try and do better. Now please, instead of punishing me, will you give me a kiss?" And Therese said, what loving father could refuse such a trusting question? I was really struck by this because I was so frustrated with my own sin. And when I would sin in my life, I would get angry at myself. So I began to implement this in my life, and that really began to transform my spiritual life and give me a whole new level of peace.
St. Therese had something that she called the little way, which helps us to grow in the spiritual life because it's a teaching on trust. It's a relationship with God that's based on trust. She talked about wanting to grow in holiness quickly. She wanted an elevator, which was new in those days, to get to God so she wouldn't have to navigate the steps. She discovered that Jesus was going to be her elevator, pick her right up and bring her close to his heart. It's a way that involved nothing extraordinary, but it involved a disposition of the heart and an attitude of the heart that we would simply call trust, faith, confidence.
There are lots of good books about St. Therese, but my book is a little different. First of all, I pair the life of St. Therese with stories from my own life so people can see how a 21st century layperson is struggling to trust God.
I really appreciated how Connie wove together the story of St. Therese's life and parts of her own life.
In order to include the memoir in my book, I really had to reflect on my life, and that really helped me. I was growing in trust in God as I was writing the book. It also helped me to be able to write the reflection questions that I include at the end of each chapter so that my readers could go through a similar process that I was going through.
When I read the chapter early on in the book about the accident where the author's sister, dear to her, died, I really could imagine how devastating that would have been in my family. And I think the example of how the mom dealt with it and how she did not let the family fall apart, but knew that God had a plan and that no matter what in life, we keep going, keep trusting, and keep carrying on.
Connie's story about the cult girls, I call it, when she was a teenager was absolutely fascinating. Not to mention the things that she experienced that were maybe not so dramatic, but very typical. Starting off in a marriage, having great plans, this is how we're going to give birth, this is how we're going to teach our kids, and and then having circumstances overrule those things, those ideas. It was real life.
Well, I have 7 children, and many things have happened in our large and busy family life, and I have no doubt that more things will happen as we age, as the kids mature, as they make decisions in the world. Last year, we had a very sad event in our family where our daughter's friend had an accident and suddenly died. And so we had together to deal with that in a very prayerful way. And I know some unexpected things will still come. So what I hope is that this book will stay with me as another reinforcement of how we live family life, always trusting God, with the example of this wonderful saint.
I want my readers to be able to be at peace no matter what happens, no matter what kind of suffering they're enduring, to realize that even though bad things happen, your life is still under God's control, it's still part of His plan, and He's there with us.
And I recommend it because it's a spiritual lesson, but also because it's a very interesting read. I love autobiographies, and I think that the author really tells us that a normal, common life of a mother can be a fascinating story when it's beautifully written.
This is the book that I I would have liked to have written. This is a topic that I have found fascinating and I'm interested in, and I just appreciate this book.